As a pastor, every year you begin to think and pray and meditate about Easter because it's the sermon that everyone's heard a million different times. And for me, as I was thinking about it this year, I kept coming back to this realization of what I hope for Easter, what I hope that we would all leave with, is that resurrection is a pathway towards transformation. That what resurrection can be is simply a story that happened 2,000 years ago in which Jesus did something for you. There was some magical pixie dust that took care of things, and you have no proactivity or creativity in your life. What resurrection can also be is just simply a concept. That's the world of church that I grew up in. It was a concept about who God was. But what I hope for all of us is that resurrection is a process of transformation. It's the reminder that our lives are transformed by our efforts and our lives are transformed by the work of God. That Jesus is risen, that death is conquered is a process that we enter into that's not just a concept, but something that I think that can radically change and reform the entire world. As I think about transformation, the definition of transformation is this: a dramatic change in form. And I think that we would all long for that. A dramatic change in form in our lives, and change in form to what? And what we see in the life of Jesus is a dramatic change in form towards love. There's not a single person in this room who doesn't say, I want more capacity to love. I want to be able to offer more love in this world. I don't want to be able to receive more love in this world. None of us would say that. We would all want to be transformed more towards love in our lives. It's the type of people that we would want to become. And in the resurrection story, we see this progress and process of resurrection and transformation that leads us and moves us towards love. So if we're going to talk about being transformed into love, we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about literally and seriously. And if we can understand the story both literally and seriously, then I'm going to tell you a sad story. Because sometimes you have to go through Friday to get to Sunday, crucifixion to get to resurrection. If we can talk about a sad story, then I'm going to talk about the Wright brothers, because obviously that's what you were anticipating on a Easter Sunday morning. And if I can talk about the Wright brothers, then we'll talk about the process of transformation. If we can talk about the process of transformation, then we need the practice of transformation. And if we can understand the practice of transformation, then SpaceX Starship, my friends. And if we can talk about SpaceX Starship, then we'll end with a story about great Grammy. Follow along with me in John chapter 20. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw the stone that had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one who Jesus loved. I love that already. Imagine writing that in there. Imagine you're the writer of the gospel. All of the other apostles are dead, and now you're writing the final gospel, and you're like, I have the final word. It's cold and the deepest flex in history. I love it. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. So Peter and the other disciple started to the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter. You gotta love that. Shade 2,000 years ago. It doesn't get any better. Right here in the Easter stories, right? I never saw this for a long time, and I'm like, that's just funny. So he outran Peter, right, and reached the tomb first. Like, what was he thinking about Peter when he was writing this? He's like, I'm finally going to get that guy, right? He was so arrogant, cocky. Oh, I'm Peter, the rock of the church, right? Yeah, well, I outran you, so there's that. And he reached the tomb first. That's right. So both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen laying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth still laying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, just in case you didn't catch it the first time. If I wasn't clear, I am seriously faster than who Peter is. So just so you know. And he also went inside, and he saw and believed. The resurrection story for me, I'm just going to show all of my cards. I know that we live in a progressive, liberal church, and I love that. But I'm still somebody who literally believes in the resurrection. I literally believe that Jesus rose from the grave. I literally believe that the first apostle, Mary saw him and ran to the other apostles. By the way, apostle in the ancient world was simply the ones who saw the resurrected Christ. I literally believe that these apostles encountered and experienced this resurrected Jesus, that hundreds of people experienced who Jesus was. And I believe that because I just don't think that they would have done all the things that they did. I don't think they would have continued to the tradition if they didn't experience a resurrected Christ. I literally believe that Paul saw Jesus on a road to Damascus. I don't think he would have changed his whole life from like living the Harvard MBA life of the ancient world as a Roman citizen to longing for persecution if he didn't experience something that transformed his life. I literally believe it because I have seen throughout the centuries and throughout the generations people who have experienced the resurrected Christ, and I literally believe it because I've seen you all experience the resurrected Christ in different ways. And here's what I also believe. You can literally believe it and be an awful human being. Some of the meanest, cruelest people I know are people who literally believe the story. They literally believe that Jesus rose from the dead, and yet they are not transformed by it because they have not taken it seriously. And what I long for in my life, what I've seen in my life, is what I hope for all of us in this place, is that in our progress of transformation, in our processes of transformation, that we take it seriously so that it changes who we are, the way that we relate to the world, the way that we're transformed, that we're no longer hurt people who hurt people, that we're healed people who healed people, that we become transformed people, I'm spitting all over the place, who transform people. This is what I long for who we are. This is what I dream of for New Abbey, but you just don't get there. These things can be concepts and just ideas, and then I think we all go through our Fridays. We all go through our darkest hours. We all go through the moments where, just like Jesus, we raise our fists to the heavens and we say, my God, why have you forsaken me? And nothing will throw you into the arms of God like suffering. Nothing will throw you into the arms of God like grief and betrayal and pain and death when you have nothing else left. You need God. Amen. NFL good because there was a lot of pastels in there. But what real wisdom has taught me is that you need them both. You need the difficult and you need the good. It was March 30th, 2008, 16 years ago yesterday. Then my dad called me and he said, we have found your sister on the floor and she's in a coma. My sister had been an addict for 15 years. She'd been addicted to cocaine. She'd been addicted to alcohol. She was depressed and in pain and suffering for as long as I could remember who she was. She had 3 kids at the time. They were 9, 8, and 4 years old. And to be honest, over those years that she had those kids, when in my mind at the time I saw her choosing her addiction over her children is how I saw it, I hated her. I hated everything about her. I didn't want anything to do with her. And then I remember getting the call in that morning, and I'm a young, fervent Christian. And I say fervent because at the time I thought it would have been faithful, but fervency and faithfulness are not the same things. I didn't know the difference then. At the time, I just thought if I was passionate enough and screamed loud enough and did the things God wanted, I could manipulate the genie upstairs. And I literally believed in this resurrection. I said, okay, God, I know what I'm going to do with all of this righteousness in my heart to let my sister know about how bad she's been, and this is kind of what she deserves. And I was like, but you know what, God, you're going to go resurrect her right there from that coma. That's what my 23-year-old self believed. I'm going to walk into that room, and you're going to do something big, God, and that's going to change her life. But it was a different story. I walked into that room, and I saw my sister with all of the pipes down her throat. And it wasn't about a literal resurrection in that moment. It was a moment of transformation. I think for the first time in my entire life, I could look at her with compassion. I'm so sorry, I said to her. I'm so sorry that you've hurt so much for so long. I'm so sorry that you've felt so alone. I'm so sorry that you're here. And I remember just holding her hand, asking everyone to leave the room, and just telling her, I'm so sorry I hated you. And I love you. And I love you. And I hope that you're free. I hope that you're so free. And I remember leaving the room. And an hour later, the nurse is coming out and saying, she's passed away. That what I learned in that moment is we can take everything literally. But man, when we take life seriously, it changes who we are. That was one of those moments in life that began to change who I am and how I see the world. It was one of those moments in life where the transformation began to make me a little bit gentler, a little bit kinder, a little bit more empathetic. It was in those moments that I learned that she wasn't this liar and this addict and the whatever. She was just a human being trying to cope, and she didn't know how to care for herself. And why we need the power of resurrection and the power of good news is there's a God out there who wants to care for us. There's a God out there who understands our pain and our deepest and darkest Fridays. There's a God out there who says, even in that, you'll have life. And how do I know that? Because I look around this room. Joy, from what you just shared, from what I know so many of your stories, you are here. You have gone through your Friday. You have gone through your darkest hours, and you have come out of it, and you still have the scars. But those scars are your story of transformation. And there are other people in this room who never thought in their wildest imagination that they would stand in church and someone would say, my good news is that today is Trans Coming Out Day. And for me, that is hope that I have. You never thought in your wildest imagination, wherever you would find yourself, that there could be vulnerability and care and other people that can meet you exactly where you're at. And that's the resurrection of Jesus taken seriously. That's what we get to participate in. It's a way more beautiful story. Transformation takes progress. Here's a picture of the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers did this in 1903. Here's a picture of humanity walking on the moon in 1969. In 66 years, we went from flying planes with people pushing you off of a cliff and goggles on to walking on the moon. That should blow your mind. What it tells me is our capacity for progress and transformation, if we want it. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh man, the world's getting worse and things are awful and look at us now and look at this and that. Imagine what we're capable of in 66 years, which is like your entire adult life. If you got 6 years of an adult life, that is such a good life. Imagine what type of transformation could take place in your life during that time. Imagine all the different stories of death and resurrection that you'll go through, all of the different phases of seasons of life that you will have lived, and imagine who you can become, the dramatic change in form of who you will be. You have the opportunity to go to the moon, to live out your wildest dreams, to push yourself further than you ever have. You have the capacity to live the life that you've always wanted, to share your deepest and darkest stories, to show your scars on your hands and say, this is what I've gone through, this is who I am, and this is what made me. But man, I remember when I was back there. And I just got story after story after story, and look at me now, I'm standing on the moon. I've lived the life that I've wanted. The progress, the possibility of transformation is something that I'm just so fascinated by, the capacity that we have. If we're going to live into the progress of transformation, then we also have to live into the process of transformation. When we think about the process of transformation, it's something that I so love about the Jesus stories. Again, I grew up in a world of church where all you had to do was raise your hand and close your eyes and everything would be taken care of for you. And I get the idea of a powerful moment. I think powerful moments are good things, but it's never what I see in Jesus. What I see in Jesus was that he calls these followers to say, come and follow me. Come on, take on my way of life. Let me show you how to do some things a different way. Let me carry your burdens for you. Let me show you what it's like to suffer. Let me show you what it's like to see other human beings as other human beings. Let me show you a path towards inclusivity. Let me move you away from exclusivity. Jesus shows us all of those things, and those things don't happen in a moment. You don't go from jumping off a cliff with a kite to getting onto the moon in a day. You participate in this process. The process of transformation starts with something that you know. We all know something at first about love. It's either caught or it's taught. There are people in our lives who modeled love for us in some ways, and or they did not model love for us, and it's so shaped who we are and how we live in the world. And in the process of transformation, it's something that you know, it's something that you're just given, and then eventually the process of transformation is something that you do. We all begin by learning just to try things out in the world. I remember being a young married man, and I thought that the best way to love my wife was just get her flowers all the time and buy her gifts. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I think it's a beautiful thing to do. But I thought that was it. Like, period, I am a good husband. But here's the truth about life. Wherever we find ourselves, we don't know what we don't know, and we only know what we know. And then you start to live. And then 18 years later into marriage, what I learned is, oh my gosh, that's not what being a good husband is. Being a good husband is creating space for intimacy. Being a good husband is being a person whom she can trust. Being a good husband is somebody who creates room for safety so that when we get in conflict, because we will get in conflict, because we're two human beings, we can learn a pathway to argue and to disagree and still love one another and care for one another. That's what transformation looks like. It's something that you do. But I didn't learn that in day one. I learned that because I thought I lost my marriage multiple times. I did that because I made horrible choices. I did that because we participated in therapy. I learned something new to do in transformation because of good people around us who had been married longer than us, who brought us wisdom. In different seasons of my life, I have been transformed by something that I can do because I just finally had the opportunity to learn it. But eventually, transformation leads us to something that we embody. And that's the good stuff. That's the magic in the world. When we are eventually people who embody love in this deeper way. When we embody love in every facet of our life, and we can grow in richness of that. I love the scriptures when they talk about this idea of what love is. No greater love than this, than one who would lay their life down for a friend. That's how you know you're beginning to embody it. That you're at such a point in your life that you would stand up for a friend in need because you have been there in the storm before, and you have been there when it's beating and battering you down, and you know what it's like to have the strength now to stand in front of the rain and the wind for the people that are there for you. And how do you know that you have the ability to do that? Because someone else did it for you. That's how you embody it. So many of you in this room have a story that you literally embody. It's your identity, it's your gender, it's your sexuality, it's your family of history. It's your story that you embody. And because you embody that, you have an opportunity to teach and to offer a gift to everyone else. That's why we need a room like this, because we all embody something different in this story of love. We all have something different to offer in this story of transformation. That's the gift. That as we begin to embody love, it gets deeper within us. For the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That can start off with just something that you know. And it can eventually be something that you do. But out of somebody who you are that you love, then you begin to embody joy in a different way. You all know those people. That when you're just around them, they just radiate joy because of the love that's in their life. You all know those people. They're just patient. They're just patient with you. Generally, they're older than you, and they've lived life well. They know that you don't know, and they're okay with that. And they give you space to be you. You know what it's like when you meet somebody who's mature, and they're not quoting the Bible at you, letting you know that you're a sinner, and clearly they're from the South. Apparently, that's where I was going there. But they're gentle. Because in that moment, you needed gentleness more than you needed anything else. When love begins to become embodied, it transforms who you are. The progress of transformation is one thing. The capacity of what we can do in such a short amount of time. The way that we can have a dramatic change in form over our lifetime, over different seasons. The process of transformation is something that we know, eventually something that we do, and eventually something that we will embody. But in order for us to live into the process of transformation, there also needs to be a practice of transformation. When I think about the practice of transformation, I just think about these two dance partners. One is surrender and one is commitment. You know in your life how those two go hand in hand. The older you get, you will see that those things will work out for you. That transformation doesn't happen just because of osmosis. It happens because you're committed to a process. No one ran a marathon because of osmosis. That's just not how it works. No one's relationships got better because of osmosis. No one got healthier because of osmosis. It happened because you were committed to the process. You were committed to practicing new things as you learned better information in your life. You put every effort that you could into it. I know when I talk with people sometimes about their relationships, and I'll say these things. I want you to picture this like someone just said you have stage 5 cancer. That's how I want you to go commit to this process. Giving it everything that you have. If somebody told you that news, and I've had people have that horrible news, you don't stand by idly. You go commit with everything you can to engage in that process. Because that's how transformation takes place. And when you're in those dark situations where you have nothing less, even when you give everything that you have, you'll always know this: I'm not in control. I'm going to surrender the outcomes. Because when I think I'm in control, and when I think that I've got it all figured out, it's just not how life works. And that's the dance of faith. You do your part. God does God's part. There's a 4th century bishop who says these words. I already forgot the words, to be honest. So pretend there was a 4th century bishop that said some really good words. I literally can't find them anywhere in my brain right now, but they are like good ones, tweetable. Probably Oprah will say it on Super Soul Sunday. And that probably would have been like the linchpin of everything that held this together for you today. But it's literally not there at all. So, the practice of transformation is something that we live into surrender and to commitment. God's part and our part. One of the things that I love about transformation is I just see it in people. As I've had the luxury of being a pastor, as I've had the luxury of getting older, as I've had the luxury of suffering, really what I look for are people who are just older. Have you ever noticed that in 80-year-olds, they either go one way or the other? They're either the most loving, caring, compassionate, spacious people that you will ever meet. They know that you don't know. They're just so excited to be alive. They laugh with you. A card game is everything for them. Or they're divisive. They spill venom into their families. They spill venom everywhere they go. Because in this progress of transformation, in the 66 years of where dramatic change could take place, that's not where they're at. I don't say that in judgment. I don't say that anyway. I'm just saying that in what we embody. And you all went, because you know that person. It was my Mimi. She was 93 years old. She's one of those people that when my papa died 8 years earlier, she had been stressed her entire life, and she now wanted to use the wealth and fortune that was given to her to make sure that she controlled every person in her family to make sure that they loved her. She used her will and changed it literally 13 times to make sure that people knew that they weren't loving her well. And she's one of those people, I swear to you, would not die. Just kept going. You're like, this is the year. No, sir. She's just going to keep on going. If she's got an opportunity to make someone miserable, she was taking it. And you all laugh because sadly we know those people. And that's not where you want to be at the end of your story. When you get to your moon, whatever that thing is, you want to be one of those people that says, this is the story that I've lived. I have gone through so much. I've gone through so much heartache and so much joy, and I'm just so spacious now. And I have so much to offer because I know how accepted I am, and how good I am, and how loving I am. That's who we all want to be. That's when resurrection and this story of Jesus and good news is not just a concept or something that happened 2,000 years ago, but it's something that worked on us daily. It's something that moved us and led us and guided us. It's something that we could arrange our lives around because it shaped who we are. That's what I want out of this resurrection story. When I think about the story of progress and the progress of transformation, I think about my wife's family. If you've met my wife, you've experienced delight. Thank you all for that. Because it's real. You can give her a round of applause, by the way. Commercial break. I never thought I'd be this pastor. Like, here's a story about my wife on Easter. And I didn't think I was doing it until this moment, so that's funny. Surprise. But my wife didn't start from nothing. Her family's modeled these things for her entire life. There was a great Grammy out there. This is a picture of great Grammy, by the way. Oh, great Grammy is so sweet. Every time great Grammy would see you, she'd give you the biggest hug and just laugh, and you were the only people in the entire world when you were in her presence. She's the right brother in my story. She's the one who was jumping off the cliff. She was the one who was embodying this progress of transformation. She was the one living through a process of transformation. She was the one practicing transformation of love in her life. so that when the next generation got there, they were like, man, we're on the moon. You have no idea what Great-Grammy did for you. You have no idea the way that she lived. You have no idea the hardships that she went through. And here's what I believe about you, New Abbey. There's a whole generation coming. They're never going to come out because of the stories that you've lived. They're going to understand a God who's not playing games with them and sending them to hell and just trying to see if they're going to secretly get raptured or not. Praise God. They're going to know a story of good news that's filled with love and kindness and transformation. They're going to know people who have embodied suffering, but because of that, they have also just offered a wealth of goodness and life and richness. You, New Abbey, are the Wright brothers for somebody else. There's a whole generation coming behind us, and they're going to stand on the moon one day because of the work that you've done. That's my dream for this community. That this story of resurrection is not just a concept that happened 2,000 years ago, but we are a living, breathing organism of transformation that is creating change in the world every single day. Because you are committed to this story and this narrative, and because you have surrendered to it as well. Now, Abby, every time I get up here and I look at all of your faces, I get real weepy. Because you've done it. I know your story. And I know your story. And I know your story. And I know what you've gone through. And I know who you are and the way that you treat our kids, Adam. Paul, I know the megachurch that you left. I can go on and on and on. And so I thank you, New Abbey. Wherever you find yourself, and whoever you are, thank you for embodying the story of resurrection. Thank you for embodying the story of Jesus and good news. Thank you for participating in transformation and love. It's a gift to me. It's a gift to one another. It's a gift to the world. Would you find those same 3 or 4 people? Would you answer this question with one another? Who can you model love for? Enjoy.